Hello, once again, I'm your host, Doc Rotten, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net, and tonight we're reviewing a very special documentary coming out this year. Is no coinkydink. It is Cleaning Up the Town, Remembering Ghostbusters. Do that again, there, Vanessa. There you go.
Oh, you gotta get my sweatshirt. Hold on, while you're zoomed in, you gotta get my sweatshirt. Venkman burn in hell.
Oh, jeez. Wow. Okay. I don't even know where to go with that. All right. Joining me tonight is lead news writer for Gruesome Magazine, the one and only Dave Dreher. Dave, how you doing, sir?
Hello. It's kind of cool to be talking Ghostbusters.
It is, and this is the OG, right? So
yeah, this is old school Ghostbuster.
Back in the day, where we at, Ghostbusters? All right. Also joining us is award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore, who may or may not like Ghostbusters. You know what? I know he does.
What?
Tell me more.
I saw him when they first came out in theaters, dude. I mean, yeah, I love Ghostbusters. I am the gatekeeper. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm the keymaster.
I was going to say
it's like the top and bottom of supernatural stuff. I am the keymaster looking for my gatekeeper. My gatekeeper hottie.
You're the keykeeper. You're just going to shrug because you're going to keeper. All right. Also joining us is podcasting rock star and international cosplay queen Vanessa. Vanessa, how you doing? And Ghostbusters Uber fan, right?
Yes, absolutely. I was so happy watching this. I get all the good feelings and emotions. I just love Ghostbusters.
I love some Ghostbusters. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is review this documentary. We're going to give it our first impression, and then we're going to dive into a discussion. And probably no spoilers here. I think everybody's seen Ghostbusters, and it's just stories, right? And then we'll wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. But before we do that, if you are enjoying if you're enjoying this review, we hope you enjoy it along with, I'm just going to give up tonight.
No. Not tonight. Ghostbusters don't give up, Doc.
No. All right. Yes, please hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button, share with a friend. It's all free and happy to do. Of course, we want to hear your comments. Leave those down below. Let's dive into it. I really don't have anything prepared for this because it's a documentary, so there's not really much other than it's coming out on Friday, October 1st. A great day to do it. I have a couple of posters to look at. I think this is the original one, and then this is the one they're putting out now, or it might be the opposite of that. I'm not really sure because it kind of started its track out there in 2019, or at least according to IMDb, and then now it's getting an official release. So because Vanessa, you were like, well, I think I might have seen this.
Somehow, maybe it was through, like I said, through a film festival or something. And the posters that you were showing, that black and white one has the little Ghostbusters 2 symbol on it. And there was talk about a 4-hour version of this being released that also covered Ghostbusters 2, but we don't have that yet.
Not yet. All right, so let's dive into our first impressions. And Vanessa, we're going to start off with you.
I loved it. Obviously. Obviously, I loved it. It just hit me in the right place, that nostalgic place, the way that they covered the information, and everyone that they spoke to extras, and got how they felt about being a part of something like that. I mean, they got Harold Ramis to do an amazing interview in this. He shared so much insight onto how the movie was made and what it was like during filming and what it was like when it came out. And it was really just so nice to see him again and see him happy and see him talking about something that he loved and enjoyed so much. It just covers everything, it covers the music, which is so iconic. It covers, like Ernie Hudson, who is basically America's sweetheart. He is To me, he's like the long running Ghostbuster. He's the one that has kind of kept the fire going. I feel like he's always at cons. He's always super cool. So, that it was nice getting to see his side too and how his character developed. But yeah, I'll take more Ghostbusters anything.
Very good, very good. All right, Dave Dreher, you're up next. What was your first impression of remembering the Ghostbusters?
Remembering the Ghostbusters. I mean, I've always loved Ghostbusters, but I have to say I never really had a craving to learn more about it. But this was a great documentary. I learned all kinds of things that I had no idea, like that Dan Aykroyd's grandpa or something, great grandpa was like an occultist, and that's where he originally. I was like, what? I had no idea, and that the original script was much more serious than comedy. I mean, there was just a wealth all the way through this. I was surprised it was I seen 2 hours. I'm like, oh God. But it's a fast 2 hours because it's just chock full. And you're right, Vanessa. Seeing Harold Ramis again, I could just listen to him talk for 2 hours straight. He could just stand up there and read the phone book. I don't care. It was just great seeing him again and hearing him go on about this. I don't think I ever realized it was such a guerrilla filmmaking type thing. I always thought of it as like big budget Hollywood film, and this really wasn't. They were making up a lot of this as they went along. The whole thing with the Slimer, how they made the suit, and it was great. There is just a ton. If you're a fan of film, especially old school film, going back to like Tom Savini's, the smoke and mirror stuff, back before there was the CGI, they just found a way to make it work. The peanut was killing me. The green peanut.
Oh yeah, the peanut.
So awesome. I mean, that's great. You can't make that shit up. That's just amazing stuff. So I thought this was a ton of fun. I'm going to watch it again. I like documentaries anyway, and this was a really good one.
Yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do. If you don't have your props, go for a peanut.
You've seen this peanut.
Reach for the peanut. All right, Christopher G. Morser, what was your first impression of cleaning up the town?
This is like the world's best Blu-ray behind the scenes feature. I mean, it definitely pulls stuff that for those of us that own like several copies of Ghostbusters, you've seen some of these things and how they did this or did that. But this takes it to the nth degree and actually goes a little bit more in depth with it. And you get to know just more than just that one effects artist, all the other people and the people that were, in the suits and the people who are doing this and doing that. And yeah, you learn so many different things about the process of making this because, I mean, most people don't understand. I mean, nowadays we see like horror comedies and supernatural comedies. That was not a big thing back then. It was very almost like controversial to make something like that and to have that level of special effects in something that's considered a comedy. And then when they like, hey, do it, and you only have this amount of time to do it, which still seems to be a problem in filmmaking nowadays, especially big budgets. They're like, hey, do this, and we have to release it on this specific day in the summer. And good luck. I'm sure you'll do great. And you only have this much money to do. And so, and then this is back in the day where, they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It's sort of like the Thing stuff where you're just throwing all this shit together, trying to make things happen and trying to create different processes and see what works and what doesn't. You're working with both puppetry as well as animatronics. And and like Dave, I knew about the Dan Aykroyd's father and stuff. I actually owned the book. I think it's called History of Ghosts. I own it because when I was doing research on like haunted house, was making a haunted house film. But there's things I didn't know. I didn't know that the sound of the ectomobile was a leopard played backwards. I had no idea. And those type of nuggets or peanuts were just peanuts of wisdom. Were just like, I was like a kid in a candy store. I mean, my film school growing up was watching special features on movies, I still have like a behind the scenes thing on the making of Empire Strikes Back on VHS. I have the Tom Savini thing on like effects. I still have that VHS where he, talks about the effects stuff. And this is like a kid in the candy store and just looking at all those specific things about how they made things. Everything from even more in depth than what I knew about the Stay Puffed Marshmallow guy. And
I want to make one now. After watching this, I feel like, okay, maybe I can make one now.
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's like so many, and just and even things like just realizing that stuff they probably cannot do today, like blocking off a part of like New York City to where they backed up traffic throughout all of freaking New York City. What movie would be able to get away with that now? No movie would. I mean, they got away with stuff you don't normally get away with, and I think just all the different things they were able to pull off with this film and make it that's still iconic and still holds up to this day and has so many great moments that are quotable. This man has no dick. I mean, there's like so many moments. I think my only issue is just, I mean, there's limitations of what they can include. Like they talk about music, but then they really couldn't play the music. And then they had like certain things in the end credits that were kind of like the music, but not. And then we didn't have Bill Murray. We didn't have Rick Moranis. I mean, I hear all these stories about how Rick Moranis' character came about and how John Candy was originally supposed to play it. I want to hear it from him talking about it. I wish he'd been included. And I know Bill Murray's Bill Murray, but I'd like him to at least sit down and talk about, I mean, just be, I don't know. Because Bill Murray, I think a lot of his career should probably be indebted to this film, even though he's made other hits. But this is the film I think that really put him in the stratosphere. So I don't know. It's a really wonderful film that has so many interesting behind the scenes stuff that I was just like, ooh, I didn't know this. Ooh, I didn't know this. And like, I was just watching all the old video footage of them testing things and stuff. To me, that just like, that's my crack cocaine right there as a filmmaker. I could watch that. I could watch 4 hours of that if it was 4 hours. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's a thing. I'm going to embarrass Vanessa right now, so I apologize in advance. But boom. So Vanessa, that was the first one I could find. So we went with I'm sure.
I think that might have been. I think the first time I met you was in that costume. That's the first time
Chris and I met. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, it was a Halloween party in. I think it was in Durham at that bar, and that's when I met you and Josh for the first time.
Yeah,
and started to.
And I won a TV with that costume.
Oh, nice!
Nice.
Was it a flat screen or was it one of those big?
It's a flat screen. Put it in my bedroom.
Just kind of wondering what kind of TV they pawned off on you. But anyway, so I will just share that I enjoyed this as well. It certainly was, this is a great film. It really, it's just great memories. Watched it when it came out. Watched it many times since then. And seeing all the behind the scenes, seeing the people that worked on it, outside of the actors, of course we know all the actors because, they're on the face, but seeing the people behind the scenes and what they had to share. And like Christopher said, that, the behind the scenes footage actually is really where this thing shines. It really does. And I really enjoyed it, but it does feel like a kind of like Blu-ray or 4K in this case, extra thing instead of a documentary. And so that's just a little nitpick on mine, is that as a documentary goes, I'd like to have a little bit more of a throughput story, and it kind of had it, but not. It was a little. So to me, as far as a documentary, it didn't work. But for what it is and what it's the film in which it's covering, maybe it just doesn't have to. Maybe it just doesn't have to. So I really enjoyed what it had to share. I'd like seeing some of the actors that are no longer with us very much. So that felt bittersweet. But yeah, if somebody can ever convince those two, Rick Moranis and Bill Murray, to actually partake in some of this, you're going to have something really special. And I know that's probably never going to happen. We'll see. We have this.
At some point, he's starting to do more stuff. So
yeah, Rick Moranis maybe. Bill Murray.
It'll be all of a sudden. If he does it, he's just gonna start talking to someone, and they better record it.
I know. I just better just. Yeah, it's like one drink too many, and whoops.
Yeah.
DVD, or Blu-ray. So anyway, I'm going to shut up because you guys are absolutely 100% correct, and I'm only 75% correct. So let's move on and talk about the details, because there are a lot of really great things. One thing that really that made me laugh was the Slimer shaking his booty. That was hilarious. Just the whole Slimer bit. I could have watched a 2-hour thing on just how Slimer came about. Yeah, exactly. But the fact that they entirely filmed it on what would now be a green screen somewhere else. It makes sense. And the whole story about that he wanted to have these big long skinny arms, and the guy says, "No, come on, just get a guy in there." And it was, okay, you got to make concessions, and it works. And the whole thing with eating the food, and the food's like sliding down the guy's back of his neck and stuff. It's just all these great stories, and you see the evolution of the artwork as well. From Bernie Wrightson all the way up to how it was sculpted and then executed, and the colors that man, I could like you said, Christopher, I could just watch that all day.
Well, even the production ideas for other monsters and stuff that never got into it. I was like, where is this in any of the feature films? I mean, I would love to see some of those creatures in the same way that Star Wars has sort of incorporated all these old designs that never got made for the original trilogy. I'd love to see some of these designs, come to fruition when it comes to any of the future Ghostbuster films, and maybe we will see some of that.
Yeah,
but I mean, some of that stuff in the process of just making it is always very interesting, because we get down to these few designs of how this goes is going to look, or how that goes is going to look, but then they went through all these designs to get to that point, and that to me, that's just really interesting. And then of course, like most things, even as a filmmaker, like, I have this idea of how this is going to be, and then you start making it, like, oh, I'm not sure we could pull that off physically, and then sometimes you screw stuff up, and that's the only thing, and that's when you just spray paint a peanut, and you just and you use a peanut, and I just funny how like there's little things like that you don't think about it, and it's just all about just being creative in the moment, and just figuring out ways that you can sell this, even if it's not. If it's going to be way off screen, you can sort of have a peanut and do that. But or just everything from just like
magic of motion blur.
Well, even the Stay Puft guy, how we need to set him on fire, and like, how many suits do we have? And then they got like a stunt person is like, I don't like fire.
That was crazy.
Like, hey,
what?
You're out of here!
And then they were like, oh, well, we have to make sure that if this thing catches on fire, it doesn't consume him with all these deadly gases and stuff. It's like, wow, this is like so many little, every detail you have to think about when it comes to that,
Did you even think a person was in there? Like, when you're watching it, you don't even think there would be a person in there.
Not that point,
you think it was stop motion or something else going on. Yeah.
But even so, it's even more than that. I think one of my favorite parts is when they have all these people on like a cart underneath the stage. So when the Stay Puft guy's moving and his eyes are moving, there's like people with controllers, each controlling different things for his expression on his face, and so they can move along with him. I was like, I just thought it was just some guy in a suit. But nowadays you could probably do it with more remote control, but I mean, all the effort they had to put in to pull off some of these shots is just amazing.
And I love seeing it.
Oh yeah. Or just even the with William Atherton, who plays Walter Peck. He's probably talked about in other Blu-ray stuff, but when he talks about how like they had to, when you think about the weight of all that stuff falling down,
shaving cream,
even though it's supposedly shaving cream, was like, that's still, however many pounds of shaving cream. Just because it's shaving cream doesn't make it less pounds. It's still the same amount of weight coming down on a human body. And they had to test like part of it on the stunt person.
And they called him a big baby. They're like, fine. And then it knocks the guy out.
Knocked the shit out of the stunt person. And they're like, okay, we'll reduce the amount this time. I mean, just little funny things like that are just so interesting, or just how they they couldn't cut into the ground of a New York City street, and they had to build it above the street, and just I don't know. There's just like so many wonderful moments. They just talk about all those. They even talked about like the woman who's like the librarian.
Yeah.
Just little small, like the guy who like spits the gum out when he gets shocked. I mean, just some of these people that had small roles, and we never see that in behind the scenes Blu-rays. You never see that. So I think that this documentary, because it's so in depth, that just makes it more interesting to me, because you get to learn all these different stories by all these little characters, like the guy who is the building owner or whatever, who had supposed to have another role. So I don't know. I just, all those little stories just make it more interesting and more in depth than just hearing the same like stuff you see, when people go out, like when movies are released and like they do their normal things of answering the same questions over and over. But to hear all these individual stories about other people who just had small parts, and whether it's like Vanessa was talking about, just somebody who's just an extra in the background, like cheering on the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that was really nice to see that kind of intimate look at it. And, Doc, you're not wrong about it not being completely polished. And that could have to do with it taking so long to gather everything that they did and all their crowdfunding and all that. But it kind of falls in line as you're watching it with Ghostbusters and with how they shot the movie, right? It has that same kind of feel to it, that same kind of rugged, like, we got to get this done. Let's get all the information we can. Let's get it out there. Let's make this product kind of feel to it. So while you're watching it, to me, it felt very much like, almost like I was there experiencing those things, or feeling like I was in the moment as these things were happening on set. And it was really, it's definitely going to appeal more to a diehard Ghostbusters fan than to just like anybody who'd watch a documentary on film. But it gets so technical with what it talks about that it's just fascinating to watch. It's like you're talking about with Savini's doc, about the smoke and mirrors. It just gets so into what they were doing and who they were and how they acted around other people and how they were able to come up with these ideas. And, I really enjoy being able to be a part of that. And yes, I'm a super uber mega ultra fan.
Nice.
So it's definitely hitting me. Yeah, it's definitely hitting me in the right place. But I just, maybe me too, Dave, I just really like documentaries, and I like a more real look at things. And it was nice to have that.
It was fun. It's fun, like here and there. And again, I'm not into it as deep as you are, Vanessa, but like I had no idea that like Slimer was kind of a surrogate John Belushi. I had no idea that was. I mean, I'll watch it. I'll watch it now and watch it in a completely different way, because they were talking about how they incorporated some of his facial expressions and stuff. And it's like that changes the whole thing. It really does. And the other takeaway too was how the Ecto-1 like broke down constantly. They were having to push it up and down the street.
They literally pushed it down the street.
Meta.
That's awesome.
I would expect you to really gravitate towards Steve Johnson too, with the, because he had that one gig to bring in the taxi zombie, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And his future working on that project depended on what he did there, and he did it, and
he nailed it.
And I loved the reaction he got. He said, "Yeah, welcome to 12 months of hell."
Well, really, they hustled, right? I couldn't imagine you couldn't do that now. I don't feel like you couldn't put those and make them work under the conditions that they did. They had no real like CGI stuff. They were working with just bare minimum brand new like computer special effects. So everything was basically real, and done on film and spliced together. And it just, nowadays it's so easy just to do it on a computer, right? And to not have to worry about any of that stuff. So seeing how people actually did it before then, it's inspiring, right? I'm sure, Chris, as you were watching as a filmmaker, especially as an independent filmmaker, it's inspiring to see, okay, when people of talent get together and they want to do something, they can make it happen, and it can look really good and be really fun. And with everything going on with the film industry right now, I think it's really cool that this movie is coming out and showing like how talented these people are and like what they're capable of. And speaking of the people who are behind the scenes, one of my favorite things was when they were talking about the terror dogs and who was going to operate the terror dogs. And they came up to the female puppeteer and they're like, do you think if we put a woman in here, it would come out more feminine? And she's like, yeah, the answer is yeah, duh.
She was awesome. Speaking
they
of that,
also had that huge set they built.
Oh, that was incredible.
Which I never realized how big that set was, and they even talked about how like Spielberg even showed up on set for that day. So to me, I mean, even though they had those sort of indie ways of doing stuff, they also had the budget to build this magnificent set on one of the biggest sound stages, ever
gorgeous.
From floor where they had to jack up the set. I mean, just seeing some of that stuff and then pictures of them in there on the set is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, to be clear, the jacking up of the set was on another picture, but
that was on another picture. But I'm just saying that the reason it was the biggest soundstage is because previously they had to build a huge, set, and so they actually jacked the sucker up.
Which, how cool is it to include that too? Like that's something you don't have to include. You can just say they did it in this soundstage, right?
Soundstage, yeah.
But then you get even more into kind of Hollywood history and how things are done, and I eat that stuff up. I love it.
Or how like they felt like that explosion's too big, they would die.
So they gotta film a scene of them jumping off in different directions, right? Yeah. But all they did was follow the drawings, right? Because it said it was boom, and that's what they did.
And then they complain about it's too big.
Don't
draw it that way.
What's really cool is how many people were brand new to their jobs on this, like the producers and stuff. How they were like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I guess I'll figure it out. I have no choice but to figure it out. And it was just really cool to see stuff like that. It's really fun to see people become successful, especially on something that you love so much, or that turned out to be so good and so well beloved by so many people. For that to be your first thing out the door when you've never done anything like that before is really cool. And to see the people that like Joe Medjuk, who went on to continue working like on the real Ghostbusters and stuff. It's cool to see somebody like that share how they started in it, and then to know their legacy and how much they continue to love it throughout the life of the property.
Yeah, and also it got into some of the conflicts between actors. Of course, Bill Murray is kind of notorious for being Bill Murray on the set, in quotes. He's Bill Murray. But I really want to shout out to Annie Potts about that one day when he came in. He could, and that she stood up to him, and the crowd, the entire film crew cheered because nobody else was going to. And
that and how she's from the South, but people automatically assume she's from New York,
right?
Because of that role.
Did such a good job.
And then Sigourney Weaver too. I liked seeing her reaction, especially the chair scene, which I think most of us remember the chair scene, and that they were timid at first because it's Sigourney Weaver. I'm not gonna
grabbing her crotch.
And grabbing
her,
but they're not right now. In the first couple takes, they're like being real gentle, and they're like, "Come on, guys." But I loved her, the way she, oh, they're so sweet, and the way she was talking about, and she had to, basically give them permission, And this is before, today, you'd be even more timid to do something like that. So.
Well, I'm thinking about the weight that she carried too, coming onto the movie, being who she was, the actress that she was, coming onto this, horror comedy, basically. I really appreciated how they showed that, how they talked about that, how they talked about her as being kind of an integral part of it, and her comparing her to, the Abbott and Costello movies and being the straight man in it, and that's why she's so beloved, I think, and so endeared to so many people who are a fan of this franchise, and just the perfect counterpart to Bill Murray. Really, I don't think anyone else could have stood toe to toe that way with Bill Murray and just been flawless. Allowed him to be like that great love interest, right?
Yeah. But it also gave him this jumping off point, depending how you look at it, to have his own character find this, purpose. I want to make an impression on, Dana, right? So, and you believe it because everybody would, right? So it humanized this jokester, this, the guy from Meatballs is now humanized, and it worked. And of course, the biggest thing this film has going for it that gets mentioned but not often enough is that New York City is such a character in this movie. And other attempts at this haven't really grasped that element of it as much or enough. I mean, even the sequel, even though it was that, it just felt it didn't quite have that oomph to it, where that, the location is a character. And it's really interesting that when a location can become a character, how much that improves a film. There's so many times that we talk about that, especially in horror films, when the location is where something happens, and that, that house, that city, that whatever is so integral to the story. And here, that it was such a great decision, to change what it was originally thought of and say no.
Well,
let's don't go to outer space. Let's come down. Let's just do New York.
Yeah.
Well, they lean into the New York stuff even more in the second one. When you have like the Statue of Liberty.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, it's the Statue of Liberty, but it's not. I mean, if you don't want to believe it says New York, it's the first one. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, to me,
I see what you mean, though. It really is, like they said, a love letter to New York, right? You feel New York. The streets are steamy and hot, and they're outside a lot, and you see all these different iconic places in New York. You see the library, you see where is she playing at not Carnegie Hall, at the Kennedy Center or something, and then you see Columbia University. Like they are showing you these iconic images of New York. And I think what also solidifies that is the soundtrack, the music that Elmer Bernstein created. Like that sound, it sounds like New York, but it also sounds like the Ghostbusters. And I was having a conversation earlier that we talk about all the sequels and everything, and you talk about Answer the Call and how for some people it didn't really fill that void. And I think the big thing that was missing that could have really changed things was the music. You take that iconic sound, that score, what Elmer Bernstein created that really was the Ghostbusters. If you take that out of the equation, then you're missing part of the team, And I think that's what's really going to hit it in this one that's about to come out too, is that they're using that music again. They're using those same kind of sounds for things, those special effects sounds that we've heard before, and it's just it's so much a part of it.
Yeah, because there's definitely other properties that we've been covering here over the past year or so where just a hint of familiar music just draws you in. We talked about The Mandalorian and other things for the Star Wars side of things, and you hear, the Tatooine theme, and what's going on.
Yeah.
It really illustrates, and of course, Ghostbusters has that as well from the first one. They're not going to as far as the promotional stuff, New York City is not a big part of that, of the Ghostbuster movie coming out this fall. So it'll be interesting to see what that shift of location does. And maybe it's what's needed. I don't know.
There is a shot of Dan Aykroyd in his shop. So I'm assuming that there'll be probably one scene where he gets a call in New York City. So New York City's probably not going to be totally pulled out of it, because we do get him in his little paranormal shop.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Which is in the trailer.
I can't wait to see who all we get and how. We know we're going to, but it's
do you, I mean, and that makes me wonder if like the new Ghost Chomper or whatever his name is, if he's going to be the Harold Ramis of that film, as
Oh, you mean like the way John Belushi?
That way Slimer was the John Belushi.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe he'll be like a spin-off, like maybe Slimer had little Slimer babies.
Well, one thing is that even
I don't want to know how that works.
Either, although we could write fiction fan fiction on it. The whole thing of what the trailer is that it really captured the spirit of Egon in it, didn't it? I have the right character, right? I don't want to screw this up. You know that with the family and everything, and what they discover and it just you feel it, and
yeah.
I feel like I'm going to get choked up going into this movie about that.
Definitely. And that's another thing that was great about this documentary is really getting to see and hear and feel Harold Ramis talk about this movie, talk about how he became a part of it and how they came up with these crazy ideas, And I watched a documentary once about National Lampoon and how all these guys kind of met and came together, and just knowing a little bit of that backstory, that history that they had coming into this. And they talk about it in the documentary too, how when you get these guys together, that's it. You're either in or you're out because they're going and they know each other so well and so intimately. So to see that and hear that from Harold Ramis it felt really special. And it's just, he brings so much fullness to it. Anytime you hear him talk about it, anytime you see him a part of something like this, especially now, he just brings so much fullness to it and so much warmth to it.
Yeah, and then he also talked about the relationship that his character had with oh my gosh, with Andy Potts, Jeannie, right? And that they pulled some of that back, even though they filmed some of it because his character wouldn't do that. But I was watching that and I'm thinking, that's got to go into the movie, right? That's got to go into the sequel we're getting.
Maybe
that Andy Potts is going to be. Maybe there's a lot. I mean, yeah. You look at that one girl, and there's a lot of both of them in it. I'm just saying, a lot of both of those characters are in her face.
I did find it funny how I never really thought it this way. I never realized how phallic the proton pack things were.
I never did either.
Until they were talking about how they would just it would shoot and pop out like an erection, and then I was like, oh God, I never realized that. And then somebody made a TikTok video because there's this new trend where they play like the Taylor Swift song and you're watching television and there's like something on television and there's, I think I sent it to Josh, Vanessa's husband. I sent it, but it's them watching the shot of Slimer when he's shaking his booty in this movie where they're testing it out.
Oh,
and
my
then the
God.
guy, he has his like proton pack and he's watching it. And the camera goes, then it goes poop. It pops up like an erection. Now I can't. Now I'm just gonna see that every time I watch Ghostbusters, and I hate thinking like that. But I'm gonna think dirty, like, ooh, his proton pack's
I love it. I have a Slimer with a big butt somewhere. I think he's out in the garage.
Where else would you put Slimer with a big butt? All right. On that note, let's go ahead and wrap this up. With our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. And Vanessa, you are up first.
Me. Yeah. Well, obviously a 5. I'll start out with that. I love this movie. I'm, like I said, a super fan, and Ghostbusters has made me happy since the moment it's come into my life. So getting to see more behind the scenes stuff, see more of how it's made. I love, as it is, the technical side of filmmaking. So getting to see that in this is just fascinating to me. And they really explain it in a satisfying way. They don't shy off of getting into the meat and potatoes of what it takes to make a film, especially under such pressure. And I really enjoyed that a lot. Perfect timing for release, I think, with the new one coming out. It's going to draw a lot of buzz to both of them. And like I said, if they ever want to release a 4-hour version that also includes the second one, I will be happy to watch that as well. I will give gladly 4 hours of my life to learn more about Ghostbusters. It's part of the reason why Josh and I got married, I think, is because we both are such big Ghostbusters fans. So it's a big deal in our lives, and I love it very much. But my favorite scene, so that's tough because there was a lot of things that just really touched me as I was watching this, but oh my gosh. I'm gonna go with kind of Ray Parker Jr. talking about putting the song together.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah, that song, everybody knows that song. Who are you going to call? Everybody knows who you're going to call. And him talking about his involvement in it and what that song did for his career. And it's just what this movie has done for the career of so many people. It's just incredible. And I love it. Came out the year I was born, so it's serendipitous for me. It's definitely, I could write a love letter to this movie in the way that it writes a love letter to New York. And I'm just happy I can't wait to own this one. And it gets me even more excited for the new one coming out.
Nice. Yeah, we should mention that it's directed by Anthony Bueno. Is that, I guess, what you're saying? And then written by Anthony and his wife, Claire. Correct?
Claire, yeah.
And the second part that you're talking about is going to be called Too Hot to Handle, Remembering Ghostbusters 2. So
nice.
That's in post-production.
Can't wait.
We'll see. We'll be covering that, I suppose, but when we have the opportunity. Because I imagine when that one comes out, there'll be, announcements about, yes, Afterlife 2 is coming out. All right. Dave, Dreyer, sir, you're up next. Your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
Yeah, love this one a lot as well. Like I stated, I'm not the uber fan that Vanessa is, but that doesn't really matter. This is just it's just a well-made film. It's a good documentary, lots of great information that I'd never heard before. So I enjoyed it. It was a very quick, easy watch for me. My favorite scene, there's a couple of them. I don't know which one to choose. Which one, Doc? One or two? One or two? You choose. One or two? Which one?
Number two.
Two. All right. The scene where they talk about the in the hallway when the maids bring out the cart and they with all those pyros, and they didn't know, so that reaction was like her actual reaction. That wasn't a scripted thing. She's like, that, what the hell you guys doing? was her actually trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
Fucking cover, man.
Which I thought was fantastic. So, and I'm going to give this, this is easily a 4.5 for me.
Nice.
Without even trying.
Very good. All right, Christopher G. Moore, your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
Well, you know me. I'm a big sucker for any behind-the-scenes stuff on the making of films. I mean, I just love the magic behind how these things come about. The process of making it. How they work through problems, or they come up with specific crazy ideas, or improvisation, like the woman in the cart. For this, I think, is even more interesting because we get beyond just the normal people who are the person who's the front of some of the things, whether it's like effects or anything like that. You get all these different people who worked on different facets of it, or even music. We don't just learn about the guy who did the Ghostbusters song. We learn about the other guys who did the cleaning up the city song.
Oh, the Bus Boys.
Yeah. So I mean, things like that are much more. And if they don't have Bobby Brown for the sequel, I'll be mad. But yeah, and just all the different little small facets of, because things are not just made by one person; it's made by many people, and all those people come together to make it happen. And just having all those little mini reviews just made my heart happy as a filmmaker, and it just made me I've always intrigued about how these come about, because it's, no matter if you have the biggest budget in the world, it's never an easy process, and things don't always turn out the way you want it to, and things are always going to go wrong, and you just got to keep moving forward. And so I just love this so much. So many, I think for me, the only, like I mentioned previously, the only missing piece is just incorporating that actual music. They can't even do the Ghostbusters tune. They can't use any of the, Burnside's music. And so that stuff is I was one of those people, I don't know about you guys, some of you guys were old enough to be around when it's on in movies, but I had the audio tape that had a mixture of the songs, and it had a mixture of the music used in the film. So you'd hear like the Dana's theme, you'd hear like, hear all the different songs. And I used to listen to that over and over and over, because this is before like iTunes and all these things where you had a million options. I just had a few tapes, and I would just play it over and over when I'm riding my bike or playing video games or whatever. So
for the cassette tape.
Yeah, so I think that's the only kind of missing thing. But when you have a limited amount of money to make these documentaries, you don't have all the money in the world to do that.
Yeah.
You can get away sometimes with footage a little bit when it's a documentary. But I think that's the only thing that kind of doesn't make it complete for me. But overall, I'll also give it a 4.5 out of 5. I would get a full 5 if they actually were able to. It does seem a little bit scattered in how they put the stuff together, which is probably just the process of the compilation of all these different things. But still, for me, this is right up my alley. This is like this is something that I wouldn't mind watching again and learning all these specific and watching all the footage and stuff. And some people might find that boring, but I just love watching all this documentation of them testing things and stuff, trying things out. As for favorite scene, my favorite thing is when they're talking about the process of the Stay Puffed, and you had those people that were so excited to be like all of them in this little cart that would move along while the Stay Puft guy's moving. And so then they're testing the eyes and doing all these things.
Oh, the test shots are so funny.
Yeah, and like later on they point out the fact that when they did the explosion, when they set the guy on fire, he's missing his little
his bow tie.
His bow tie thing, or his little
scarf,
the scarf thing.
And he's like, "We got to do it again." And Reitman's like, "We ain't doing it again."
And to be honest,
spend $30,000.
I never noticed it until they pointed it out.
No,
so,
yeah, you wouldn't.
And I think that's probably just in the all the people that it takes to make that pull at that shot, and just know that you have this big doom walking, and below you have these people in the car just being pushed along. I love the visuals and the thought process. That's how you pull the shot off. You didn't have the remote control technology you have today. But yeah, that's probably the thing that really stuck out the most that made me smile from ear to ear.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say that's my favorite part too, Christopher, is the actual behind the scenes footage, testing the, like Slimer and some of the rest of them, and really getting into what it took. And then there's a couple of, we get some stills as well from behind the scenes that have some of the main actors and stuff in it. And you get to see some of them illustrate the camaraderie between our leads, and really, what this film has going for it is the passion behind making it, much like the passion that was there making the film itself, Ghostbusters. So it all translates, and it all has that warm feels. And there's, we get, like you said, we get to see even down to these supporting actors, the guy that, the two that are being experimented on in the opening scenes, right? The one that spits out the gum, and the other one's that I wish I had blown dry my hair. Because she thought she was going to make up, and I said, "Nope, you look great. Go in."
The gum bit was improvised.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, I love this story. It's like, hey, you got any more gum? And that gave him his gum that got him the part. So, it's what are you going to do? I mean, it all comes together that way for everybody, and it's has that special place. And it's a feel good documentary, and I enjoyed it. 4.5 is where I'm going to go as well. And I think the scattering, Christopher, is kind of what I'm recognizing too. The through story of the entire documentary is not as tight as you would maybe expect, but it is titled Remembering Ghostbusters. So as far as achieving what they're after, it does go back and relive making this film. And, from that perspective, and capturing, the passion and the ingenuity that went into it, and the sheer luck in a lot of cases. There's some stuff that I've learned on there's like something that was on Netflix that, expanded a little bit on, getting that Ghostbuster, the actual Ghostbusters name, because there was a show in the 70s that owned it, and they had to get it, and the serendipity and how that actually came about is is fascinating. They touch on it here, but they don't go into the detail. But there's all that kind of stuff that this film just had happen. It's like everything was, all the stars were in the right order, and all those cliches, and we ended up with this classic film. And so my favorite scene, there's so much you can go with, but I got to go with the shaking the booty of Slimer. I just
Slimer booty.
I just loved how they figured out
jiggling.
that it just gave him this life when he moved, right, and he bounced. But then they made him turn around and shake his butt. And
Slimer could have his own OnlyFans, but just based on that.
He might, and we just haven't gotten there yet.
Well,
anyway,
don't go looking for that.
don't look for Slimer twerking.
You end up in the wrong place. So anyway, all right. Well, there's our review for the documentary "Cleaning Up the Town." Remember Ghostbusters? It lands on October 1st out there, and then I think it toward the middle of October it actually ends up on Blu-ray and VOD. So check it out. Dave, Vanessa, Christopher, as always, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. You didn't thank Slimer, Doc. You better
thank you, Slimer.
There you go. That's better.
I'm glad we could celebrate a documentary and a film that celebrates probably one of the most iconic, one of those iconic films that'll still stands the test of time and still people will be quoting until we're dead in the ground.
Yeah, it does make me look forward to November 2021 for Afterlife. So we'll see what happens there. All right, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
Good night.